My name is Sophie Grant. I'm 28, and I've spent my life trying to make a name for myself in a family that's never really seen me. I grew up in a mansion overlooking the bay, surrounded by wealth and privilege, but none of it ever mattered because I was always the other one. My older brother, Jacob, was the golden child, the charming, successful son who could do no wrong. Meanwhile, I was just the quiet one, the one who never quite fit in, the one whose achievements were always overshadowed by his. I've spent years wondering why I wasn't enough, why my mother, Evelyn, always favored Jacob, why my father's affection felt so distant. But then came the birthday dinner, the night everything changed, the night Jacob gave me a DNA test as a joke, mocking me as another man's mistake in front of the family. What I didn't know then was that this test would unravel everything I thought I knew about my identity. There's something much darker at play, something my family is hiding from me. And the truth? It's about to destroy us all. The dinner was a blur. It always was. Every year, the same faces, the same hollow smiles. My mother, Evelyn, seated at the head of the table, wore a thin, tight smile as she sipped her wine, eyes never meeting mine. Jacob sat beside her, his laughter filling the room as he regaled everyone with stories of his latest business venture. I didn't even register the moment when he slid the wrapped box across the table toward me. "Happy birthday, Sophie," he said with that familiar smug grin, one that made my stomach twist. I took the box, my fingers tingling with unease, and slowly unwrapped it. Inside was a DNA test kit. The room fell silent for a beat, before Jacob's voice broke through the stillness, a mocking lilt in his tone. "Maybe this will finally explain why you're always another man's mistake in this family." The laughter that followed was sharp, cutting. My mother's nervous giggle, Jacob's booming laugh, the clink of wine glasses. Each sound felt like a hammer against my chest. I forced a smile, but it didn't reach my eyes. I could feel the weight of the room pressing down on me. Everyone was in on the joke. The joke about me. "Jacob, stop," my mother murmured. But I saw the way her eyes flickered nervously. She wasn't defending me. She never did. I didn't respond. I couldn't. The words lodged in my throat, thick and bitter. I had always known I was different, but this felt like the final confirmation. A joke? No. It was a game. A cruel game. As I sat there, holding the test kit in my hands, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to it. This wasn't just about mocking me. This was about something much bigger, something that had been buried beneath the surface of our family for years. I excused myself, walking away from the table without another word. I didn't need to hear any more of their hollow laughter. I needed answers. Back in my room, I paced the box still in my hands. My mind was racing, connecting dots that didn't quite align. Why did Jacob want me to take the test so badly? Why was my mother so eager to dismiss it? There had to be more to the story. I wasn't just another mistake. I couldn't be. I opened my phone and stared at the screen, the DNA testing company's website staring back at me. I hadn't planned on taking the test, but something about tonight, the laughter, the mockery, made me want to know the truth. And that feeling of being watched, it made my skin crawl. I clicked the button to order the test, my finger trembling as I confirmed my details. It felt wrong, but the desire to understand what I was really made of outweighed the fear. The family's secrets were beginning to unravel, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for what I'd find. The next few days passed in a haze. I tried to bury myself in work, tried to forget about the test, but it haunted me. I couldn't help but wonder what would happen when the results came. Would it confirm what I already suspected? Or would it expose something darker, something I wasn't ready to face? Then the email came. The results. The words stared back at me. No biological relationship detected with the Grant family reference samples. I sat frozen in front of the screen, my heart pounding, my hands shaking. I wasn't his daughter. I wasn't Jacob's sister. Everything I had ever known, the way I fit into this family, was a lie. And just like that, everything changed. My entire life. The ground beneath me began to crumble, and the more I tried to hold on to it, the more I slipped. I wasn't ready for the truth, but the truth was coming for me, whether I was ready or not. And it wasn't just about my family. It was about the legacy of the man who raised me. And I had no idea what that meant for me now. I needed answers, but I couldn't help but wonder, was I ready to face the truth? As I sat there, staring at the screen, a chill ran down my spine. Someone wanted me to take that test. But why? The sound of my phone buzzing broke through my thoughts. I glanced down at the screen. A message from Jacob. "I'm sorry, but the truth always comes out." My breath caught in my chest. I didn't know it then, but that message would be the first of many, each one leading me deeper into a web of lies, manipulation, and betrayal that I wasn't sure I could survive. But there was no turning back now. The results sat in front of me, an empty void where certainty used to live. No biological relationship detected with the Grant family reference samples. My hands trembled as I read the email for the third time. I wasn't just an outsider in my family, I was a complete stranger. I closed my laptop, the screen still glowing in the dim light of my apartment. The quiet hum of the city outside did nothing to quiet my mind. My entire life, everything I thought I knew was a lie. My father, Richard Grant, wasn't my biological father. I wasn't Jacob's sister. I wasn't who I thought I was. The air in my apartment felt thick, pressing down on me as if it were about to suffocate me. It was so absurdly simple, the way everything had changed. A piece of paper, a result, and suddenly, everything I had ever known about myself came crashing down. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears, the quiet beating louder with every passing second. It was only supposed to be a joke, wasn't it? That's what Jacob had said. But what if it wasn't? What if there was more to it? Why was he so eager to give me that test? I stood up, walking toward the window. The city lights shimmered below me, like little flecks of gold trapped in the night. Why would Jacob want me to take that test? I muttered to myself, but even I could hear how futile it was to ask the question. I didn't know, and I didn't trust him enough to ask. I had to know more. There had to be something else. Something he wasn't telling me. There had to be a reason why I wasn't just his sister, why he had pushed me away for so long. A quick knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. I froze. My heart skipped a beat, and my breath caught in my throat. It was too soon for Grace to be here. I hadn't told her about the results. I crossed the room slowly, listening for any hint of movement outside. There was nothing. Just the soft hum of the elevator beneath me. I reached for the door handle, hesitating for a split second before I turned it. Standing on the other side was Max Turner, the private investigator my mother had hired years ago to follow me. I froze, my stomach sinking. I didn't invite him in. I didn't even have to say a word. He just stepped inside. "Hello, Sophie," Max said, his voice smooth, too smooth. "We need to talk." I took a step back, panic rising in my chest. "What do you want?" I tried to keep my voice steady, but I felt a crack under the weight of the truth pressing down on me. Max was calm, too calm. He didn't move further into the apartment. Instead, he just stood in the doorway, his eyes scanning the space like a predator sizing up its prey. "We both know your family's secret, and we both know what happens next." I swallowed hard, feeling the walls close in. I wasn't prepared for this, not now, not after everything I'd just learned. "What are you talking about?" I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. Max stepped forward, his gaze unwavering. "Your father's will," he said. "It's not just about money. There's something much bigger at play here, Sophie. You think this is just a DNA test? It's not. It's part of something much more dangerous." I felt my pulse race. "What do you mean?" I demanded, now stepping closer to him, desperate for answers. He sighed, as though explaining something very simple to a child. "Your father, Richard, left something behind. Something he wanted you to find. But it wasn't meant for your brother, Jacob. It was meant for you. And that's where the problem lies. I wanted to ask more, to demand every detail, but the words didn't come. Instead, I could feel the room closing in. This wasn't just about a test. It wasn't about who my father was. It was about something else, something buried in my family's past. I didn't trust Max, but I didn't have a choice. He had the answers I needed, and it seemed like he was the only one willing to reveal them. But before I could speak again, his phone buzzed. Max looked down, his expression tightening. I could see it, the flicker of something urgent behind his eyes. The next moment, he raised his head, his voice lower now. "You're being watched, Sophie. Jacob is not the only one interested in what you find." I blinked, confusion settling in. "What do you mean? Who else is watching me?" Max gave me a small, knowing smile. "The question isn't who's watching you. It's who's already controlled everything you're about to find." He turned to leave, his voice cutting through the silence. "You're in deeper than you think, Sophie. Get ready for the truth." As the door clicked shut behind him, I was left standing in the silence, the weight of his words sinking in like stones in my chest. Who's already controlled everything? I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of something much darker than I could have ever imagined. And somehow I knew there was no way out. Not anymore. The phone buzzed again, this time from my mother. "Call me," the text read. "We need to talk." I couldn't ignore it. Not now. Not after everything Max had just said. Something told me the conversation with my mother was going to be the start of my unraveling. I grabbed my phone, the weight of the decision heavy in my hand. The message from Jacob echoed in my head, long after the screen went black. "The truth always comes out." I sat there, in the dead silence of my apartment, staring at my phone. His words felt like a warning, not just to me, but to everyone in the family. What was he really trying to say? I could almost hear his smug voice, knowing something I didn't. The test was only the beginning, I realized. It was no longer just a matter of being his sister, or not being his sister. It was a matter of family secrets, money and power. There was something buried here, something dark, and I was at the center of it all. I pulled on my jacket and left the apartment without bothering to lock the door behind me. As I stepped into the cold night air, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The streets of San Francisco were bustling, but there was something off about tonight. The usual hum of the city felt distant, like everything had been distorted into a half-real, half-nightmare version of itself. As I walked, the shadows felt deeper. My footsteps echoed too loudly, too hollowly. It was like the city was holding its breath. I arrived at the lawyer's office, just as the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the sleek glass doors. The office felt sterile, too clean, the air thick with the scent of polished wood and expensive cologne. Inside, I was greeted by Robert Pierce, the family lawyer. He had a sharp, businesslike demeanor, and his eyes were always too calculating, too knowing. It made me feel small, like I was a piece on a chessboard that everyone else already had figured out. "You're early," Robert said, barely looking up as he flipped through a file on his desk. "I needed to talk to you," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. He raised an eyebrow, setting the file aside. "About the will, I assume?" I nodded, my throat tight. "About everything." "Sit down." His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it, like he already knew what I was about to ask. I took a seat across from him, forcing my hands to stop trembling. "The results came back," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not Jacob's sister." "I'm not." I stopped myself, afraid to say it out loud. I wasn't just questioning my identity anymore. I was questioning my entire existence. Robert's eyes narrowed, and for the first time, I saw something flicker behind his usual mask of professionalism. He leaned forward, folding his hands on the desk. "I figured as much," he said quietly, his voice dropping. "That test wasn't just for you, Sophie. It was for Jacob." "What do you mean?" I asked, my heart racing. "What's going on?" Why did Jacob want me to take that test so badly? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into the drawer and pulled out a thick envelope. He slid it across the desk to me. You might want to look at this. I opened the envelope, my hand shaking as I pulled out the documents inside. There, in black and white, was a notarized copy of Richard Grant's will, the original version, not the one Jacob had made public. The will was simple at first glance. Richard left most of his assets to Jacob, but there was a section that had been sealed, an amendment to the will that had never been revealed. It was only meant to be opened under certain conditions. My name was mentioned. The conditions were specific, too specific. The final words hit me like a freight train. In the event of my daughter Sophie discovering the truth of her parentage, I hereby allocate the sum of $50 million to her, to be held in trust until such time that she has uncovered the truth about her origins. I sat back in my chair, my mind reeling. $50 million? Why would my father have left this to me? Why wasn't this in the public will? Robert watched me carefully, as if waiting for my reaction. Your father's original will wasn't meant to be seen by anyone except you, he said, his tone now grim. Jacob knew about this amendment. He was aware of what your father had planned for you. But this will change everything. If Jacob gets his hands on this, it'll destroy everything Richard left behind. I could hardly breathe. My chest felt tight, like the walls were closing in on me. The weight of the document felt heavier than anything I had ever held before. I had no idea how deep this went, but now I understood. Jacob hadn't just been mocking me. He'd been hiding something. And it wasn't just about money. It was about control. I looked up at Robert, who was studying me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Why didn't you tell me about this before? I asked, barely keeping the fury in my voice. Why did you wait? I couldn't, Robert said, his voice low. Your father had his reasons. And so did I. He didn't elaborate, but the silence between us felt heavy with unspoken truths. I wanted to ask him more. I wanted to understand what he meant, but I didn't have time. I could already feel Jacob's shadow hovering over me. I had no idea how long I had before he tried to take everything from me. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Jacob. You won't get away with this. The truth is mine to control, not yours. My stomach dropped. I was being watched. The walls were closing in, and Jacob was already 3 steps ahead of me. I stood up abruptly, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. What happens now? I demanded, my voice shaking with a mixture of fear and anger. Robert didn't flinch. Now, he said slowly, the real game begins. I walked out of the office, my mind spinning. The cool night air hit me like a slap in the face, but it did nothing to clear my head. As I stepped into the street, I felt it, the unsettling sense that I wasn't alone. The shadows in the alley seemed to stretch longer, moving with me. Someone was following me. I quickened my pace, but the footsteps behind me kept getting closer. I turned a corner, my breath shallow, and then I saw it. A black SUV, parked across the street, its engine running. And there, standing near the door, was Max Turner, the private investigator. He looked up as I caught his eye, and for a moment, everything seemed to freeze. And then he smiled. I stopped dead in my tracks. What was he doing here? You're in deeper than you think, Sophie, Max called out, his voice carrying through the night air. This isn't just about your father's will anymore. And I realized with a sickening clarity that I was about to find out exactly how far my family's secrets went. The chill of the early morning air crept through the cracks of my apartment window as I stared at the envelope Robert had handed me the day before. It felt like a time bomb waiting to go off. The will, Richard Grant's original will, was in my hands. A document that had been hidden from me, and I was just beginning to understand why. I had barely slept. My mind raced, unable to calm itself. The secret will was supposed to answer my questions, but instead it only raised more. I knew Jacob would stop at nothing to protect what he felt was his. The thought made my stomach churn. I couldn't trust anyone, not even Robert. But there was no turning back now. I had to know the truth, even if it meant risking everything. I grabbed the envelope, feeling the weight of it in my hands. I had to go to the house, to the family estate, and dig deeper. There were things I still didn't understand. Things I needed to find. Things that could change everything. I left the apartment without telling anyone where I was going. No one could know I was about to confront my family. They couldn't know that I was stepping into the lion's den. As I drove, I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, but the streets were quiet. The sky had started to darken, as if the city itself was holding its breath. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The shadows seemed to stretch longer, clinging to the corners of the street. The house was still the same. Grand, majestic, cold. But today it felt different. The air inside was heavy, like something was about to break. I moved through the grand hallway, my footsteps echoing off the marble floors. It was as if the house itself was holding secrets, whispering them into the empty space. I stopped at the study door. It was always my father's place, the one room he had never let anyone into. The door creaked open slowly, the familiar smell of aged wood and leather filling my lungs. My father had spent hours in this room, working, planning, hiding things. And now, it was my turn to uncover whatever it was he had left behind. I moved toward the desk, scanning the surface for anything out of place. Papers were scattered across it, but nothing caught my eye. I opened the drawers one by one, my fingers trembling with anticipation. And then I found it, the hidden compartment in the back of the middle drawer. I took a deep breath before pulling it open. Inside was a small black metal box. It was locked. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead. This was it. Whatever was in this box, it had to be the key to everything. I quickly examined the desk for a key, but found nothing. Frustration bubbled up in my chest. I needed to find a way to open it. I knew Jacob wouldn't have left anything to chance. Just then, I heard a noise behind me. A door creaked open. I turned quickly, my heart slamming into my ribs. Looking for something, Sophie? Jacob. He was standing in the doorway, his eyes cold and calculated. A smile tugged at the corner of his lips, but it was empty, devoid of any warmth. My blood ran cold. I had been so focused on the box, I hadn't heard him approach. How long had he been standing there? What are you doing here? I asked, my voice steady despite the panic that swirled inside me. I could ask you the same thing, he replied, stepping into the room. His presence filled the space, oppressive. You've been digging, haven't you? You think you can just waltz in here and find what was never meant for you. He walked toward me, his footsteps deliberate, echoing in the silence. I could feel the tension mounting in the room, thickening with each passing second. I'm not here for nothing, Jacob, I said, my voice gaining strength. I have a right to know. This family, it's not what I thought it was, and neither are you. Jacob's expression flickered for a moment, his smile slipping into something more dangerous. You have no idea what you're dealing with, Sophie. You never did. I stepped back instinctively. I'm done playing your games. What's in the box? What are you hiding? Jacob laughed softly, the sound low and mocking. You really think you can just come in here and take what's mine? What's always been mine? You don't belong here. I glanced at the locked box again. Is that what this is about? The money? The inheritance? You're missing the point, he said, his voice darkening. It's not about money. It's about control. This family isn't just about blood. It's about power, and I've always been the one who holds it. I froze. My mind raced. What do you mean? You've always controlled everything. What do you mean? You've always been the one holding it. Jacob didn't answer right away. He stepped forward, his eyes locking with mine. Everything you've ever been told was a lie. I was always the heir, not you. I could feel the world tilt, my body unsteady as the implications of his words sunk in. I had always known something was off, but this? This was more than I could have imagined. Are you saying? I trailed off, struggling to find my voice. You think I was just a brother? Just a family member? Jacob's eyes hardened. I've known about you, about everything you've uncovered. You think Richard's was meant for you? No, Sophie. It was always meant for me. And now you're playing right into my hands. The world seemed to blur around me as I processed what he was saying. The weight of the box, the weight of my entire life, suddenly felt so heavy. You're not who you think you are, Jacob continued. And it's time for you to learn that the hard way. Suddenly, the door slammed open behind me. I spun around, but before I could react, I saw Max Turner standing there, his expression unreadable. Time's up, Sophie, he said. And just like that, I realized everything I thought I knew was slipping away. I was in too deep. And this game? It wasn't one I could win. I was halfway to my car when I felt it, the shift in the air. The way the world seemed to hold its breath as I turned the corner. I tried to shake the feeling, but it clung to me like a shadow. The sensation that I was being watched. I glanced over my shoulder, but there was no one in sight. The street was empty, save for a few parked cars. I started walking faster, my heels clicking sharply against the pavement, but my pulse quickened. Something was off. I wasn't alone. I could feel their eyes on me. I reached the car, threw open the door, and slid inside, locking it immediately. My hands trembled as I placed the key in the ignition, but the engine didn't start. Not at first. It sputtered. The kind of sputter that makes you think you might be stuck, might be stranded. I gripped the wheel, my breath coming in short bursts. Then the engine roared to life, and I sped away from the curb. I didn't even look back. As I merged into traffic, my phone buzzed in the seat beside me. The screen lit up with a text from Max Turner. You're being followed. Don't trust anyone. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. I was being followed. My stomach dropped, and for the first time in days, I felt a cold sweat break across my skin. It wasn't just paranoia anymore, it was real. I punched the gas and made a sharp turn. If I could lose whoever was tailing me, maybe I'd be able to think clearly. But as I glanced in my rearview mirror, I saw it. The black SUV, the same one from before, was there. Silent, persistent, like a phantom haunting me. I took another turn. The SUV followed. Every move I made, it was there. I could almost hear the tires screeching behind me. The air in the car felt suffocating now. I needed to lose it, needed to break free. But no matter how fast I drove, the black SUV stayed close. My phone buzzed again. This time a call. Jacob's name flashed on the screen. I didn't answer. Suddenly, I swerved the car into an alley, trying to shake the SUV. For a moment, I thought I had done it. But when I emerged from the alley, the SUV was right there. It wasn't just a tale anymore. It was a game, and I was losing. I turned sharply onto a quieter road, hoping I could outrun it. I couldn't. The SUV sped up, pulling closer. This is it. They've caught me. It's over. I hit the brakes. The SUV, too close now, slammed into my rear bumper. The sound of metal crunching. The sickening thud as the impact hit. I slammed my hand against the horn, but there was no one around to hear it. And then, before I could process what had just happened, a figure emerged from the SUV. Max. I jerked the car into reverse, trying to escape, but he was already standing in front of me, blocking my path. I had no choice but to stop. Max moved toward my car, his expression unreadable. The weight of everything, the secrecy, the lies, settled on my shoulders like a boulder. I rolled the window down slowly, the cold air rushing in. What is this? I demanded, my voice shaking with anger and fear. Max didn't answer at first. He only stared at me for a moment, his eyes hard and unreadable. You shouldn't have gone digging, Sophie, he said, his voice low. This isn't a game. It's bigger than you think. What do you mean? I demanded, frustration and panic mixing in my blood. Max stepped back, glancing around quickly as if making sure no one was watching. Jacob isn't the only one who's been keeping secrets. But he's the one who's been pulling the strings, Sophie. Everything you've found? It's all part of the plan. My heart skipped a beat. What plan? There's a lot more at stake here than your inheritance. You're playing a game you don't understand, Max said, his tone dark. Jacob's not the only one trying to control the family fortune. There's someone else. Someone who's been waiting for you to make your move. And trust me, Sophie, you don't want to know who it is. I took a step back. You're saying Jacob isn't the mastermind? No, there's someone else. His voice dropped to a whisper. Someone who's been waiting for you to find out the truth. Who? I demanded, but Max didn't answer. Instead, he pulled out an envelope from his jacket pocket and handed it to me. What's this? I asked, taking it from him. Read it, he said, turning to walk away. But before he got too far, he turned back. Whatever you do, Sophie, don't trust your family. They're all playing you. I didn't have time to respond. Max was already back in the SUV, his door slamming shut behind him. The black vehicle roared to life, and just like that, he was gone. I sat there for a moment, the weight of his words sinking in. My fingers trembled as I tore open the envelope. Inside, there was a piece of paper. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was my mother's. I'm sorry, Sophie. I never meant for you to find out this way. The truth is, you're not just a victim in this family. You're part of the game, and I need you to stop looking. For your sake. I sat there, staring at the note, as the words began to swirl around me, pulling me deeper into a web I couldn't escape. Max was right. It wasn't just Jacob. It was something much bigger. And now, I had no choice but to find out exactly how deep the lies went. But as I sat there, waiting for my next move, a single thought crossed my mind. Was I playing the game, or was the game playing me? And for the first time, I didn't know if I was ready to find out. The world seemed to slow down as I sat across from my mother, the woman who had raised me, the woman whose secrets had unraveled everything I thought I knew about myself. I could feel the weight of the room pressing down on me, the walls closing in as I stared at her, searching for any sign of remorse, any flicker of truth in her eyes. But there was nothing. She had always been so controlled, so careful. Now she was just broken. I never meant for you to find out this way, Evelyn said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. But the truth, it's bigger than you think. I didn't know what to say. The words I wanted to speak, anger, betrayal, confusion, were stuck in my throat. I wanted to scream, to make her understand the years of neglect, the years of silence, the years of being invisible to her. But in this moment, I wasn't sure what was worse, what I'd learned about my father or what I was discovering about her. You knew, I said, my voice trembling. You knew all along. About the will, about Richard, about everything. She nodded slowly, her gaze falling to the floor. I knew, but I couldn't tell you. It wasn't safe. Safe? I echoed, disbelief rising in my chest. You kept me in the dark because you thought it was safe for me? You kept me invisible for my whole life, and that was for my own good. I was trying to protect you, she said, her voice breaking. I was trying to protect the family. Protect the family? I couldn't keep the bitterness out of my voice. By letting me be the punchline of every joke? By letting Jacob control everything? Her eyes flickered with something like guilt, but she didn't speak. She didn't have to. I already knew. It was never about protecting me. It was about her. It was about saving herself. I stood up abruptly, the chair scraping across the floor as I did. You chose him. You always chose Jacob, I said, my voice a low growl. But what about me? What about my life? She didn't answer, her silence speaking volumes. I turned away, pacing the small room as my mind spun. I couldn't stand being in this place anymore. I couldn't stand the air, thick with lies and regret. Why did Richard leave me that money? I demanded, my voice cracking. Why did he leave me a part of the inheritance? Why was I worth more than a family secret? For the first time, her eyes met mine, and I saw the weight of her choices in them, the weight of the years spent hiding the truth. Because he loved you, Sophie. He loved you in a way your father never could, and he wanted you to have the life he knew you deserved. I stopped in my tracks. And you? Her eyes softened. I loved you too, but sometimes love isn't enough. My heart ached. The betrayal stung in a way I wasn't ready to face, and yet there it was in front of me, naked and raw. I turned and walked to the door, the weight of everything pressing down on me like an invisible force. But before I left, I heard her call out softly, "Sophie, I'm sorry. For everything." But her apology was hollow. It couldn't undo the years. It couldn't undo the damage. I stepped out into the night, the cold air biting at my skin as I took a deep breath, the weight of the truth hanging heavy in the air. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Jacob. I didn't answer. I couldn't go back. Not to him. Not to the lies. Not to the suffocating world they had built around me. I had to leave it all behind. I started walking, my steps sure, my resolve hardening. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew it didn't matter. For the first time in my life, I wasn't walking toward something that was out of my control. I was walking toward something that was mine, a future that I would build on my own terms. I thought about the past, about the years I'd spent feeling invisible, lost, forgotten. But that didn't matter anymore. It wasn't my story anymore. The story of the girl who lived in the shadows of her family was over. I had lived my life in a way that was dictated by the lies of others. But now I was choosing my own path. The night was quiet, the world still, but in the silence I found my answer. The hardest part wasn't finding the truth. It was accepting that the family I had always known wasn't the one I had to keep. The hardest part was learning that I had never needed their approval. I was enough on my own. And in that moment, I realized that the greatest inheritance I'd ever received wasn't the money, the family estate, or the secrets of the past. It was my freedom. Freedom from the lies. Freedom to live the life I deserved. The world ahead of me was uncertain, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid. The truth, painful as it was, had set me free. And that was enough. You can't change the past, but you can change how it shapes you. With that thought, I stepped into the unknown, knowing that whatever came next, I was ready to face it.